The most thrilling and disconcerting day of my life commenced with an unforeseen meeting with my stepsister Emily. On a Thursday afternoon, the silence of the house was only broken by the soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the living room. I had been home alone, aimlessly flipping through television channels trying to quell the boredom that had settled over me like a thick fog. There were errands for my father and his wife Catherine today. They left together, leaving Emily and me alone in the house, a prospect that usually filled me with a sense of peaceful solitude. However, lately things have changed. Emily and I had never been close, despite being roughly the same age. Yet our personalities were polar opposites. She was organized and meticulous, always with a plan, while I preferred a more laid-back, spontaneous approach to life. Our interactions were limited to polite greetings and cursory exchanges. A comfortable distance maintained between us, however. Over the past few weeks I had noticed a shift in her demeanor, and her eyes would linger on me a moment too long, her presence a constant in whatever room I occupied, always a little too close for comfort. It was subtle, nothing overt, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that an unspoken current flowed between us. That afternoon I was in the kitchen scrolling through my phone, the sunlight streaming through the windows casting a warm glow over the room, and I tried to ignore the strange energy that seemed to permeate the air whenever Emily was near. She had been in her room all day, or so I thought, but when I heard footsteps behind me, I knew she was about to make her presence known. "Hey." Emily's voice broke the silence as she entered the kitchen. I looked up from my phone, and my heart skipped a beat as I saw Emily standing in the doorway, her arms crossed over her chest. She appeared relaxed, yet there was something in her eyes, a spark of something that made my pulse. I replied casually, trying to maintain my composure. "What's up?" She shrugged, walking further into the kitchen. Her gaze never leaves mine. "Not much, just felt like coming downstairs. It's pretty quiet in here." "Yeah, it is." I consented to placing my phone on the table. "Catherine and Dad will not return for some time." Emily looked at the clock and then at me, a mischievous smile on her lips. I understand. She spoke with a provocative undertone. That is why I descended. A knot tightened in my stomach, a blend of fear and excitement. Her gaze possessed a certain quality, a humorous yet earnest glimmer that both captivated and disconcerted me. She approached the stove, retrieved glass from the cabinet, and filled it with water. She advanced with intentional elegance, each step calculated, as if she were aware that my gaze was tracking her every motion, which it was. I was intrigued by her demeanor, with her hair cascading over her shoulders and her lips forming a knowing smile. "What are you doing here alone?" she inquired, sipping from her glass and leaning against the counter, her eyes directed at me. I shrugged, attempting to preserve a nonchalant look, merely disinterested. "I suppose I am passing the time." She nodded, maintaining eye contact with me until they returned. "Your recent behavior has been unusual," and her comment caught me off guard. "What do you mean by?" Emily tilting her head and her smile expanding slightly. "I am unaware of your avoidance of me." I blink, taken aback by her remark. I had not intentionally avoided her, but I may have subconsciously distanced myself from the underlying tension between us, whatever its nature. The tension between us has been growing, and I was unsure of how to proceed. "I am not evading you," I stated, yet my tone lacked assurance. She raised an eyebrow and set her glass on the counter, indicating that you were also present. I shifted uneasily in my seat. Uncertain of how to react, I had been maintaining my distance. I could not comprehend the reason, but a change had occurred between us. I didn't know how to respond to it. I wasn't sure if it was just my perception or if she also sensed it, but I had been trying to ignore it. "My attention has been elsewhere." She spoke feebly, aware that her explanation was hardly a convincing one. Emily's smile broadened as she approached, her eyes shimmering with a feeling I could not fully interpret. Occupied, indeed, too occupied to engage in conversation with me. Her speech possessed a light-hearted lilt, yet I discerned an underlying seriousness, an unspoken sentiment. "I am not evading you, Emily." I repeated, my voice, now quieter and less confident, as she took another step closer, her body just a few feet from mine. The tension in the room intensified, creating an electric atmosphere. My heart raced, and I swallowed hard to preserve my composure. "I believe you are," she murmured, her gaze probing mine. "But it is not obligatory." I blink, astonished by her remarks. The room suddenly appeared more confined, the distance between us diminishing with each fleeting moment. Emily's presence was overpowering, rendering clear thought difficult. "I am uncertain about your reference," I stated. However, the words seemed vacuous. Emily advanced further. With her face mere inches from mine, I sensed the heat emanating from her body, the warmth of her skin in contact with mine. My pulse raced, and my intellect accelerated as I attempted to comprehend the situation. This was my stepsister, with whom I had cohabited for years, yet in this moment, she did not evoke the essence of a sister. She seemed utterly different. "There is no need for pretense, Alex," she murmured, her voice scarcely perceptible. "I am aware you experience it as well." I stifled my breath, caught in my throat as her words resonated. She was correct. I had sensed the tension, the unspoken connection that had been brewing between us for weeks. I had attempted to dismiss it, to persuade myself it was illusory. But now, with her standing so near, her gaze fixed on mine, denial was no longer an option. I began to speak, but my voice faltered, unable to articulate a coherent thought. Ellen's hand then moved, gently brushing against my arm. The slightest contact sent a surge of electricity through me, quickening my pulse. "You don't have to say anything," she whispered, a knowing smile gracing her lips. "Just stop pretending." Before I could muster a response, Emily leaned in, her lips softly grazing my cheek. The gesture was simple, almost innocent, yet it ignited a fervor within me. The overwhelming realism of the event immobilized me like a tidal wave, confirming that it was not just a figment of my imagination. This unspoken tension, this undeniable connection, was real. Emily felt it too, and there was no turning back. Her lips lingered on my cheek for a fleeting moment, a tantalizing tease that sent my heart into overdrive. I could feel the warmth of her breath against my skin, the subtle pressure of her lips, a ghost of a touch that left me yearning for more Emily. I breathed, my voice barely audible. I didn't know what to say to a part of me that wanted to pull away to extinguish this flame before it consumed us both. But another part of me, the part one had been desperately trying to ignore, craved her. Closeness yearned to explore the depths of this forbidden attraction. She didn't move away. Instead, she smiled, that soft, knowing smile that made my heart race. What she asked innocently, as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened, but the tension between us was undeniable. Crackling in the air like static electricity, "We can't," I began, but the words felt hollow, devoid of conviction. My mind whirled with confusion, trying to reconcile the impropriety of the situation with the undeniable desire that surged within me. This was Emily, my stepsister. This was wrong, wasn't it? But then she moved again, stepping closer, her body gently brushing against mine. I could feel the heat radiating from her and the softness of her touch as she reached up and placed her hand gently on my chest. My breath caught as a wave of emotions washed over me. Confusion, excitement, and a longing that I couldn't quite name. Her gaze was fixed upon me, a challenge evident in their depths. I swallowed with difficulty, attempting to clear my mind, but it was impossible to think clearly with her proximity. Her touch elicited goosebumps along my spine. "Do you understand the reason I described my voice as tremulous and uncertain?" Emily's hand glided down my chest, her fingertips meticulously outlining a trail that accelerated my heartbeat. "Do I inquire gently?" her lips forming a mischievous smile. "Since it appears you have desired this as fervently as I have?" Her words hit me hard. Was she right? Had I been harboring these forbidden desires all along? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, a wave of guilt washing over me, but beneath the guilt there was something else. A thrilling sense of anticipation. Realization that a part of me had been yearning for this moment without even unknowingly. I started to speak, but my voice faltered once more. Emily took another step closer, her body pressed against mine. I could feel the rapid beat of her heart against my chest. Her eyes intense, a mix of desire and curiosity. "Was impossible to look. You don't have to be afraid," she whispered, her hands sliding up to caress my neck, her thumb gently tracing my jawline. You no longer need to pretend. It felt as though everything I knew was shifting beneath my feet. I tried again, but my voice failed me. She shook her head, silencing me with the softest of touches, her fingers gently brushing against my lips. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice steady and reassurance. "You don't have to say anything." And then, before I could protest, Emily leaned on her lips, pressing against mine in a kiss that was both tender and electrifying at first. The kiss was gentle, almost hesitant, as if offering me an opportunity to pull away, but I didn't. Conversely, I discovered myself kissing her in return, my hands involuntarily traversing to her waist, drawing her nearer. The kiss intensified gradually and purposefully, and a flood of warmth coursed through me, stimulating every nerve and sensation. Emily's hands intertwined with my hair, her body crushed against mine, constricting my breath, yet I was reluctant to disengage. This was authentic. The occurrence was exhilarating, and its illicit nature was captivating. Upon our eventual separation, breathless and with our foreheads touching, the world appeared to dissolve. Time ceased to progress, and nothing else held significance, as the two of us found ourselves at an unforeseen moment. I whispered, my voice trembling with surprise, as Emily offered a kind, playful smile that quickened my heartbeat. "What does it feel like?" she inquired, her eyes shimmering with a blend of enthusiasm and apprehension. I swallowed hard, my thoughts still in disarray. I was uncertain how to respond. It felt like everything had changed, like our simmering tension had finally erupted. Yet, it also felt irrevocable, with no possibility of reversing what had just occurred. "I don't know," I confessed, my hands still resting on her waist. "But we cannot pursue this." Emily's smile wavered, yet she did not withdraw. Instead, she gazed at me with an intensity that made my heart race. "Why not?" she asked softly. "Why can't we?" Her words sent a jolt of confusion and exhilaration through me. This was wrong. It had to be. However, the way she looked at me, the way she had kissed me, rendered everything so tangible, so undeniable. "You're my stepsister," she spoke feebly, the statement seeming more like a justification than a valid explanation. Emily arched an eyebrow, her grin re-emerging as she inquired. Her voice was gentle yet persistent. "There is no biological relationship between us. We are merely two individuals. There is no need for that to hinder you." Her reasoning was technically perplexing. She was correct. We were not biological relatives, but we were linked through our parents' marriage. Nevertheless, the significance of that connection loomed heavily over us. However, what of them? What about Dad and Catherine? I asked Emily. Emily's smile faded, and she sighed softly, stepping back slightly to create a little space between us. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice quiet, "but I know that I don't want to pretend like nothing's happening between us anymore." Her words hit me hard, and a wave of emotions surged through: guilt, confusion, and something deeper. Something I wasn't ready to name. What could we do? She was right. We couldn't keep pretending. Our tension had been growing for too long. Now that it had surfaced, there was no going back. "Now I don't know if we can just ignore this," I said, my mind still reeling. Emily nodded, her eyes softening. Emily gently said, "We don't have to figure everything out right now. We can take it one step at a time." Her words brought a strange sense of calm to the storm raging inside me. She was right. We didn't have to have all the answers right away. We just had to be honest with ourselves and each other about what was happening. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension in my chest began to ease. "Okay," I said softly. "One step at a time." Emily smiled, a genuine smile this time, and the sight of it made my heart swell. "We'll figure it out," she said quietly. Together, and in that moment I believed her. But the story was far from over. The days following that charged encounter in the kitchen passed in a haze of anticipation and apprehension. The tension between Emily and me only intensified, fueled by the memory of our forbidden kiss and the undeniable shift in our relationship. We tried to maintain semblance of normality, to pretend that nothing had changed. But it was a futile effort. Every time we were in the same room, the air crackled with unspoken desires, every accidental touch sending shivers down my spine. I could see the same intensity reflected in Emily's eyes, a magnetic pull that drew us closer despite the inherent danger of our connection. About a week later, I found myself restlessly perched on the living room couch, attempting to focus on the television screen, but my thoughts were consumed by a whirlwind of forbidden fantasies. I could hear Emily moving about in the kitchen, the clinking of dishes and the soft closing of cabinet doors. A symphony of domesticity that did little to soothe my restless mind. My father and Catherine were out for the evening. Leaving the house eerily quiet, the silence amplifying the turmoil within me. Couldn't escape the memory of Emily, the way she had looked at me. The feel of her lips against mine, the lingering warmth of her touch. Every moment alone with her was charged with a palpable tension. The forbidden attraction grew stronger with every passing day. As I was preparing to go to the seclusion of my room, Emily appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands with a dish towel. She halted in the doorway, her gaze locking with mine, eliciting a thrill of anticipation along my spine. "Are you well, Alex?" she inquired, her tone gentle yet imbued with a hint of apprehension. I nodded, my throat constricted. She entered the living room, flinging the dish towel onto a neighboring chair before perching on the edge of the couch a few feet away. The atmosphere between us was charged with unexpressed longings, while my heart raced in my chest. She queried with her eyes, probing mine. Paused, unsure of how to reply. My thoughts had been entirely preoccupied with her and our relationship since that night in the kitchen. Yet I struggled to express those emotions and accept the reality of our illicit connection. Everything. I eventually articulated my voice, just above a whisper. Emily maintained her stare, resolute. "Indeed, I concur." We remained silent for a minute, the burden of unarticulated words palpable in the atmosphere. I sensed the magnetic attraction between us, compelling us to draw nearer with an undeniable power. I recognized that if I did not depart immediately, we would transgress another limit. I was uncertain about my readiness to breach, although my body contradicted my better sense. I was compelled to lean towards her, attracted by an unseen power. Emily did not withdraw. Her eyes softened, reflecting the longing evident in my own. We agreed to proceed gradually. I whispered, my voice trembling with eagerness. Emily offered a knowing smile that caused my heart to race. "We are proceeding cautiously," she responded gently, although that does not imply we should disregard the current situation. Her words kindled a spark within me, and before I could restrain myself, I leaned closer, diminishing the distance between us. Emily approached me, her lips grazing mine in a kiss that was gentle and hesitant, reminiscent of our initial encounter, although devoid of any uncertainty this time. Only the two of us yielded to the unmistakable bond that had been developing for weeks. The kiss intensified gradually and purposefully as I sensed Emily's hand ascend to stroke the nape of my neck, drawing me nearer. My heart raced in my chest, my skin electrified by the intensity of the moment. It was as though the world had dissolved, leaving alone the two of us. We were engulfed in a tempest of illicit longing. Upon our eventual separation, we were both panting, our foreheads touching as we endeavored to restore our composure. The world appeared to fade, and for a brief instant, it seemed as though we were the sole individuals in existence. I suggested we cease, my voice barely a whisper against her lips, yet the words seemed devoid of substance. My hands remained on her waist, hesitant to release their grip. A gentle smile graced Emily's lips as she tenderly stroked my cheek. "Do you genuinely wish to prevent her?" she asked, her voice a gentle whisper that sent shivers down my spine. I wavered, my heart thumping against my ribs like a confined bird. "I am uncertain." I acknowledged the uncertainty in my voice. She sighed, expressing her desire to avoid complicating matters. Forehead still resting against mine, our breaths mingling in the space between us. "I understand," she murmured, her voice laced with understanding. "But perhaps we're not complicating, perhaps we're simply exploring the unknown." Her words resonated within me, a spark of truth igniting amidst the confusion. This didn't feel like a mistake, a transgression against the sanctity of our family bond. It felt like an awakening, a discovery of a connection that had been lying dormant, waiting for the right moment to blossom. "I don't know what we're supposed to do," and I admitted, my voice barely audible. A confession whispered against her lips. Emily leaned closer, her eyes locking with mine, a silent promise reflected in their depths, but I know she whispered, and before I could utter another word, she captured my lips in a passionate kiss. It was a kiss that unleashed a torrent of emotions, releasing all the pent-up longing we had both been harboring. We surrendered to the moment our bodies entwined our souls. Connecting it was an exhilarating, terrifying, and liberating dance of forbidden desire. The intensity of our emotions consumed us, and before I knew it, the moment had passed, but Emily didn't seem to mind. It was a shared experience. With a muted recognition of the inescapable bond that united us, Emily withdrew. A playful smile graced her lips. "We will resolve it." She made a vow before ascending the stairs, leaving me exhilarated and desiring further engagement. I acquiesced. However, internally, I saw the complexity of the situation. We had surpassed a boundary and entered uncharted territory with no possibility of retreat. In the subsequent days, there existed a weird amalgamation of normalcy and heightened awareness. An unarticulated intensity permeated every glance, every touch, and every shared moment. Although we did not address the events that transpired, the bond between us was unmistakable. An imperceptible thread wove through our every interaction. I endeavored to adhere to my customary routine, yet the world appeared altered, sharper, more vibrant. I was acutely conscious of Emily's presence, her every movement, her every breath. The atmosphere crackled with unexpressed desires, transforming each encounter into a delicate interplay of anticipation and trepidation. One evening, approximately a week later, we found ourselves alone in the house once more. My father and Catherine were out for dinner, leaving us enveloped in a silence that magnified our unvoiced emotions. I sat at the kitchen table, pretending to be interested in a magazine, but Emily, the memory of her kiss, and the forbidden yearning that ignited within me consumed my thoughts. Emily entered the kitchen, her movements poised and intentional. My heart raced as she took a seat across from me, the dim light casting shadows across her face, her expression inscrutable. "We need to talk," she stated, with a voice both gentle and resolute. I set the magazine aside, my heart racing in my chest. Despite knowing this conversation was inevitable, I was nervous. We could no longer deny the truth. "Yes," I replied, my voice revealing my anxiety.
I suppose vedo.
Elin leaned forward, her hands clasped on the table before her, remaining silent for a moment, her gaze fixed on me as if seeking the appropriate words. The silence was thick and oppressive, laden with unexpressed emotions. "I don't know what to do," she confessed, her voice tinged with vulnerability. She expressed uncertainty about our expected behavior. I nodded, swallowing hard, my mind struggling to find answers, as I had yet to confront the truth resonating in my words.